The salvaged ship scrap heap drifted lazily through the asteroid belt, her weathered hull bearing witness to decades of faithful service. Inside the cramped bridge, Captain Eva Rostova stood with arms crossed, studying the faint energy signature that had appeared on their scanners an hour earlier. "Jax, adjust our heading 3 degrees starboard," she ordered, brushing a strand of silver streak hair from her face. Her voice carried the gravel of command, tempered by years navigating the edge of known space. Again with the detours? The young pilot didn't hide his frustration as his fingers danced across the controls. "We're already 2 weeks behind schedule on the Ganymede contract." Eva shot him a withering look. "When you've captained your own ship for 20 years, you can complain about my decisions. Until then, follow orders and adjust our heading." From the corner of the bridge, a hulking figure shifted. Borin, their alien engineer, towered over the human crew members. His greenish-gray skin stretched over a frame nearly 7 feet tall, and his 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he analyzed the readings. "Energy signature inconsistent with known vessel patterns," he rumbled in his deep bass voice. "Fluctuations indicate unstable power source. Recommend caution, Captain." "Noted," Eva replied. She'd hired Borin 3 years ago, and despite his laconic nature, she'd come to rely on his technical expertise and unflappable demeanor. The Crotalian rarely showed emotion, but his assessment confirmed her suspicions that this was no ordinary salvage opportunity. The 4th member of their small crew sat hunched over a workstation near the rear of the bridge. Dr. Eris Thorne mumbled to himself as he cross-referenced the energy readings against his extensive database. Unlike the others, his presence on the scrap heap was temporary. A contract historian and linguist specializing in first contact protocols, hired to authenticate potential alien artifacts they might recover. "Found something?" Eva asked, moving to stand behind him. Eris straightened, his lanky frame unfolding as he gestured excitedly at his screen. "Possibly. The decay pattern of these energy pulses resembles ancient progenitor technology, far older than anything we've encountered before." His eyes gleamed behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Certainly nothing made by the Lumine, despite their territorial claims to this sector." At the mention of the Lumine, Jax groaned. "Great, just what we need. Those glowing snobs watching our every move." The Lumine were among the oldest spacefaring civilizations known to humanity, a species of energy manipulators who viewed physical matter as a crude medium at best. Their technological achievements centered around phase shifting, gravity manipulation, and pure energy constructs beyond human comprehension. They tolerated humanity's expansion into nearby systems with the indulgent contempt of adults watching children play in the mud. The Lumine consider this entire sector their historical domain, Eris pointed out. Though legally, "I know the treaties," Eva cut him off. "They can claim whatever they want, but salvage law is clear. If we find abandoned technology, we have the right to recover it, regardless of whose territory it's in." An alert chimed, and Borin moved to another console. Approaching source of energy signature. Visual contact imminent. Eva returned to the captain's chair. On screen, maximum magnification. The main view screen flickered and then displayed what at first appeared to be a particularly large, irregular asteroid. But as the scrap heap drew closer, the true nature of the object became clear. "That's a ship," Jax whispered, all traces of his earlier annoyance gone. The vessel was massive, at least 5 times the size of the scrap heap, and unlike any ship design any of them had seen before. Its hull appeared to be composed of an iridescent black material that seemed to absorb rather than reflect the distant starlight. The overall shape defied conventional aerospace engineering, with jutting angles and curves that suggested alien aesthetics. Parts of it seemed to fade in and out of visibility, as though sections were phasing between dimensions. "No visible propulsion system," Borin noted. "No conventional entry points detected. Structure appears intact despite significant age indicators." "Age indicators?" Eva prompted. "Micrometeorite impact patterns suggest prolonged drift." Metal fatigue analysis indicates minimum 3,000 years of space exposure. Dr. Thorne was practically bouncing with excitement. Captain, this could be the find of the century. An intact vessel from an unknown civilization, possibly predating even Lumine expansion in this sector. Or it could be a death trap, Jax muttered. Life sign readings? Eva asked, ignoring her pilot's pessimism. Boren manipulated the controls. Inconclusive. Energy interference preventing accurate bioscan. Detecting. Movement within hull, but pattern does not match known life forms. Eva was about to respond when a new alert sounded. Incoming vessel, Boren announced. Lumine patrol craft approaching at high velocity. The sleek, luminescent form of a Lumine patrol ship appeared on their screens, its hull seemingly composed of pure light held in perfect geometric patterns. It halted abruptly near the derelict vessel, maintaining a respectful distance. They're scanning the derelict, Boren reported. And now, scanning us. A communication request flashed across their display. Eva nodded, and the face of a Lumine appeared on screen. Like all their kind, the being appeared vaguely humanoid, but composed entirely of glowing energy, with features that shifted subtly as it spoke. Primitive salvagers, the Lumine addressed them, its voice melodious yet dripping with condescension. Your presence near this ancient debris is noted. Our scans indicate negligible value. You may proceed with your collection efforts. The being's features arrange themselves in what might have been a smile. Though we suggest caution, your crude tools and kinetic-dependent bodies are ill-suited to navigating ancient technology. Before Eva could respond, the communication ended and the Lumine vessel accelerated away, disappearing in a flash of light. Charming as always, Jax said with a scowl. Eva turned to her crew. The Lumine just gave us official permission to salvage. Boren, prep the shuttle. Jax, bring us in closer and establish a stable orbit. Dr. Thorne, gather your translation equipment and any historical reference materials you think might help. And weapons? Jax asked. Eva considered the derelict ship floating before them. Standard salvage kit. Energy cutters, plasma torches, and stun weapons should be sufficient. If the Lumine didn't consider it dangerous, I doubt we'll need anything more substantial. Boren made a sound that might have been a snort. Lumine overconfidence in energy manipulation blinds them to physical threats. Recommend caution regardless. Noted, Eva said. Gear up and meet at the shuttle bay in 20 minutes. As the crew dispersed to prepare, Dr. Thorne lingered on the bridge. Captain, may I bring some items from my personal collection? I have several historical weapon replicas that might provide interesting cultural context if we find artifacts aboard. Eva raised an eyebrow. Your hobby collection? Those antique firearms you're always tinkering with. Eris nodded eagerly. Just a few small pieces, purely for comparative research. Fine, Eva sighed. But they stay secured unless you're specifically documenting a find. Clear. Crystal clear, Captain. Eris beamed, hurrying from the bridge. Eva turned back to the view screen, studying the ancient derelict. Despite her outward confidence, a sense of unease settled in her stomach. Throughout her career, she developed a sixth sense for trouble, and something about this salvage operation was setting off alarm bells. But the potential payoff, discovering technology from an unknown civilization that predated even the mighty Lumine, was too great to ignore. Just another day hauling space junk, she murmured to herself, trying to shake off the feeling that they were about to stumble into something far more dangerous than abandoned alien technology. The shuttle detached from the scrap heap with a gentle shudder, its thrusters firing in controlled bursts as Jax guided it toward the derelict vessel. Inside the shuttle's cramped cabin, Eva checked her salvage suit's seals one final time while Boren monitored the approach trajectory from the co-pilot seat. Any change in the energy readings? Eva asked. Boren shook his massive head. Fluctuations continue. Pattern suggests automated systems on emergency power. Possibility of dormant defense protocols cannot be ruled out. In the rear of the shuttle, Dr. Thorne fumbled with his equipment. a look of rapt fascination on his face as he stared through the viewport at the approaching alien ship. Beside him lay a sealed case containing what Eva knew were several of his prized antique weapon replicas, meticulously crafted reproductions of firearms from Earth's history. "I'm detecting what might be a docking bay on the ventral section," Jax reported, adjusting their approach. "Structure doesn't match any conventional design, but there's definitely an opening large enough for our shuttle." "Proceed with caution," Eva ordered. "Boren, keep scanning for any signs of automated defenses." The shuttle glided toward the massive derelict, the stark contrast between their small craft and the ancient vessel becoming increasingly apparent. As they drew closer, details of the alien ship's hull became visible. Intricate patterns etched into the black material, symbols or writing perhaps, running in complex spirals and geometric arrangements. "Those markings," Eris breathed, pressing against the viewport. "They're similar to fragments I've studied from the Zeta Reticuli archives, but far more elaborate. This isn't just a ship. It's a library, a historical record inscribed on its very hull." Eva wasn't particularly interested in xenoarchaeology at the moment. "Focus on finding us a safe entry point, Doctor. You can admire the artistry once we're aboard, and I'm confident we're not going to be vaporized by some ancient defense system." Jax guided the shuttle into the opening they detected, the darkness of the derelict's interior swallowing them as they passed through what appeared to be an energy field rather than a physical barrier. Inside, the shuttle's lights revealed a cavernous space that might indeed have once served as a hangar or docking bay. "Atmosphere present," Bourne announced, studying the readings. "Composition unusual, but breathable for humans. Temperature 5 degrees Celsius. Gravity at 0.8 Earth standard. Maintain sealed suits until we verified environmental stability," Eva instructed. "Weapons on stun, communications open at all times. Stay within visual range of at least one other crew member." They disembarked cautiously, boots touching the alien deck with soft metallic sounds that echoed strangely in the vast chamber. The interior of the ship was even more disorienting than its exterior. Corridors twisted at impossible angles. Rooms seemed larger inside than geometry should allow, and surfaces shifted subtly when not directly observed. "Non-Euclidean architecture," Eris whispered reverently. "Spatial manipulation on a structural level. The beings who built this likely perceived dimensions differently than we do. Or they just had terrible interior designers," Jax quipped, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. Eva activated her suit's scanning equipment. "Boren, you and I will investigate the source of those energy fluctuations. Jax, you and Dr. Thorne check for any salvageable technology or artifacts. Stay on comms. Report anything unusual immediately." They split into two pairs, moving deeper into the ancient vessel. Eva and Boren followed the strengthening energy readings, while Jax reluctantly accompanied the over-enthusiastic historian. As Eva and Boren traversed the twisting corridors, the engineer's scanners began detecting anomalous readings. "Captain," he rumbled, detecting unusual energy signatures throughout this section. Not from main power source. Smaller, independent sources. Dormant, but intact. Before Eva could respond, Eris's excited voice came through their comms. "Captain, you need to see this immediately." Eva and Boren altered course, following their HUD directions to rejoin the others. They found Jax and Dr. Thorne in what appeared to be a vast chamber filled with thousands of metallic objects arranged in neat rows. Each object was roughly the size of a human torso, with an insectoid appearance. Multiple limbs folded against segmented bodies, all composed of the same iridescent black material as the ship's hull. "What the hell are these things?" Eva asked, approaching one cautiously. "Some kind of maintenance drones, maybe?" Jack suggested, keeping his distance. "Or worker robots?" Eris was scanning them with his specialized equipment, eyes wide with excitement. "I believe they're sentinels, autonomous defense units. The markings on their carapaces indicate they were designed for protection and enforcement." He pointed to symbols etched into the metallic shell. This glyph here appears repeatedly in ancient texts describing guardians or warriors. They're inactive, Boren stated, scanning the nearest unit. Power levels minimal. Autonomous functions dormant. He prodded one with a tool, eliciting no response. Impressive energy absorption capabilities in their outer shells would render conventional energy weapons ineffective if active. Jack snorted. Well, good thing they're just fancy paperweights now. He tapped the nearest sentinel with his boot. Probably broke down thousands of years ago. Don't be so dismissive, Eris chided. These are technological marvels. The materials alone could revolutionize our understanding of energy-resistant alloys. He ran his scanner over another sentinel. They appear to have internal power sources completely independent from the ship's main systems. Theoretically, they could remain operational even if the host vessel were completely powered down, which means they could also reactivate if the right conditions were met, Eva said grimly. Let's proceed with caution. Our primary objective is to locate the ship's command center or power core. These things can be studied later by a proper research team. They continued deeper into the vessel, encountering more Sentinel units along the way, all dormant and unresponsive. The architecture grew increasingly abstract, with chambers that seemed to defy the laws of physics and corridors that looped back on themselves in impossible ways. Eventually, they reached what Eris identified as the ship's central control room, a spherical chamber whose walls were covered in control interfaces unlike any human design. In the center floated a pulsing crystalline structure that Boren scanners identified as the main power source. This is incredible, Eris breathed, approaching one of the alien interfaces. The control systems appear to be designed for beings with a completely different sensory apparatus than humans or even Lumine. These aren't visual displays, they're some kind of direct neural interfaces. Can you make sense of any of it? Eva asked. Eris hesitated. Perhaps, with time, my translation algorithms might be able to... Captain, Boren interrupted, his deep voice unusually urgent. Detecting power surge. Primary systems activating. The crystalline structure in the center of the room began pulsing more rapidly, its glow intensifying. Throughout the chamber, dormant interfaces suddenly illuminated, casting the room in an eerie blue light. What did you touch? Eva demanded, looking between Jax and Eris. Nothing, Jax protested, backing away from the nearest console. I merely scanned the interface, Eris said, his excitement turning to concern. The scanning beam itself shouldn't have triggered. A loud, resonating tone echoed throughout the chamber, followed by a series of pulsing sounds that seemed to form a pattern. A language, perhaps, though none they recognized. That's a security alert, Eris translated, his face paling as he consulted his handheld device. I think it's identifying us as unauthorized intruders. Time to leave, Eva decided immediately. Everyone back to the shuttle. Now, they turned to exit the chamber, but the doorway they'd entered through had sealed shut, the material of the wall flowing seamlessly to close the opening. Alternative exits? Eva asked, drawing her energy cutter. Boren scanned the chamber. Negative. All apertures sealed. A new sound reached them, a skittering, metallic noise that grew louder by the second. From recessed compartments in the walls, dozens of the Sentinel units they'd seen earlier began emerging, their previously dormant forms now alive with pulsing energy. Their limbs unfolded, revealing articulated appendages ending in various tools or weapons. Defensive protocols activated, Boren announced unnecessarily as the Sentinels oriented toward them, their featureless heads somehow radiating menace. Jax drew his plasma pistol, aiming at the nearest Sentinel. So much for the Lumine assessment of negligible danger. The Sentinel units began advancing, moving with startling speed and precision for machines that had lain dormant for millennia. Eva raised her energy cutter and activated it, the blue-white beam humming to life. Defensive formation, she ordered. Back to back. The crew formed a tight circle as the Sentinels closed in. Jax fired first, his plasma pistol discharging a bolt of superheated energy at the nearest unit. The bolt struck the Sentinel's carapace and was absorbed completely, the surface of the machine actually brightening slightly where it had been hit. "What the hell?" Jax exclaimed, firing again with the same result. Boren's scanning device beeped urgently. Energy weapons ineffective. Their shells absorb and convert energy attacks. Each hit increases their power levels. So we're essentially charging them up by shooting them. Eva asked incredulously, deactivating her energy cutter. Affirmative, Boren confirmed grimly. One of the Sentinels lunged forward, faster than Eva could react. She felt searing pain across her arm as the machine's appendage sliced through her salvaged suit and into the flesh beneath. She stumbled back, clutching the wound as blood seeped between her fingers. Jax fired continuously, emptying his plasma pistol's charge into the advancing machines with no effect. The Sentinels moved with increasing speed, their shells glowing brighter as they absorbed the energy attacks. "The door," Eris shouted suddenly. "Look!" The sealed entrance was opening again, the wall flowing back to create an aperture. Without hesitation, Eva shouted, "Fall back!" Through the door now. They burst through the opening, finding themselves back in the corridor they'd entered from. "Run for the shuttle," Eva ordered, clutching her injured arm as they sprinted through the twisting passageways, the skittering sounds of the Sentinels close behind. The journey back seemed impossibly longer, the ship's non-Euclidean geometry working against them as corridors stretched and chambers rearranged themselves. They reached a junction Eva was certain they hadn't passed before. "Which way?" Jax panted, his plasma pistol now completely drained. Boren consulted his scanner. Shuttle location uncertain. Ship's internal structure appears to be reconfiguring to impede our escape. "We need to find a defensive position," Eva decided, scanning their surroundings. "Somewhere we can hole up, until we figure out how to deal with these things." Eris pointed down one of the corridors. "That way. I'm detecting a large chamber that might serve as a temporary refuge." They followed the historian's direction, the sounds of pursuing Sentinels growing louder behind them. The corridor opened into a large chamber that appeared to be some kind of maintenance bay, filled with equipment and materials they couldn't identify. "Seal the entrance," Eva commanded as they rushed inside. Boren moved to a control panel near the door, his fingers working rapidly over the alien interface. The door slid shut just as the first Sentinels rounded the corner. "That won't hold them for long," the engineer warned. "Their energy manipulation capabilities will allow them to bypass standard locks." Eva looked around desperately. "We need weapons that will actually hurt these things." "Ideas. I've been analyzing the Sentinel we damaged during our retreat," Boren said, examining his scanner. The impact against the bulkhead caused microstructural damage to its carapace. Kinetic force appears to affect them, while energy weapons are counterproductive. "Kinetic force?" Jax repeated. "You mean like hitting them? With what?" A slow smile spread across Dr. Thorne's face. "I believe this is where my hobby might prove unexpectedly useful." He opened the case he'd been carrying, revealing several antique firearm replicas. "These aren't just models, Captain. They're fully functional reproductions." Eva stared at the historian in disbelief. "You brought actual firearms aboard my ship?" "Technically, they're historical reproductions," Eris corrected, lifting what appeared to be a large-caliber revolver from the case. "This is a replica of a 21st century .45 caliber revolver. Completely mechanical operation, no energy components whatsoever." He removed another weapon. "And this is modeled after a 12-gauge shotgun from the same era." "You said they were just for research," Eva exclaimed. Eris had the grace to look sheepish. "I may have understated their functionality, but in my defense, they're primarily research tools. I study historical weaponry as part of my work on technological development patterns across civilizations." A loud bang against the door interrupted them. The Sentinels were attempting to break through. Eva made a quick decision. "We can discuss your deception later, Doctor. Right now, we need to know if those things will actually work against the Sentinels." "Theoretically, yes," Eris said, checking the revolver's cylinder. "If Boren's analysis is correct, and the Sentinels are vulnerable to kinetic impacts, traditional firearms should be effective. They operate using controlled chemical explosions to propel solid projectiles at high velocity, completely independent of energy weapons technology. Those are museum pieces, Jack said skeptically. Even if they work, do you have ammunition for them? Eris patted his utility belt. I always carry a supply, for documentation purposes. Not a large amount, but enough for an emergency. He looked at Eva, which I believe this qualifies as. Another impact shook the door, causing metal to buckle inward. We don't have many options, Eva conceded. Boren, can we repurpose any of this equipment to create more kinetic-based weapons? The engineer was already examining the chamber's contents. Affirmative. Many components could be adapted. Hydraulic presses, magnetic accelerators, mining tools. He picked up what appeared to be a heavy mechanical device. This resembles an industrial rivet gun. Could be modified to fire solid projectiles. What about the shuttle? Jax asked. It has asteroid-seeding launchers for mining operations. Those fire solid projectiles. If we can reach it, Eva said grimly, looking at the increasingly damaged door. For now, we need to hold this position and figure out how to neutralize enough Sentinels to clear a path back to the shuttle. She turned to Eris. Doctor, distribute your weapons and show us how to use them. Eris quickly demonstrated the operation of his antique firearms, explaining the loading mechanisms, firing procedures, and safety protocols. Eva took the revolver, while Jax reluctantly accepted the shotgun. Remember, you have limited ammunition, Eris warned. Make every shot count. What about you? Eva asked. Eris removed a smaller firearm from his case. I'll manage with this. It's a replica of a 9mm semi-automatic pistol. Boren had already begun modifying the industrial equipment he'd found, his engineering expertise allowing him to quickly repurpose the alien technology. Creating improvised kinetic launchers, he reported, will be crude but functional. Just as he finished speaking, the door gave way. 3 Sentinel units burst through the opening, their metallic limbs clicking against the floor as they advanced. Eva raised the revolver, aimed at the leading Sentinel, and pulled the trigger. The weapon roared, its report deafening in the enclosed space. The heavy bullet struck the Sentinel's carapace dead center, punching through the material that had effortlessly absorbed energy weapons. The machine staggered backward, dark fluid leaking from the hole in its shell. It worked, Jax exclaimed, then fired the shotgun at the second Sentinel. The spread of pellets tore into the machine, shredding components and severing 2 of its limbs. Eris fired his pistol at the third, his shots less accurate but still damaging. The Sentinel jerked as bullets impacted its body, its movements becoming erratic. Eva fired again, her second shot hitting the first Sentinel in what might have been its central processing unit. The machine collapsed, its limbs twitching spasmodically before going still. Primitive but effective, Boren observed, before tossing a makeshift projectile weapon to Eva. Modified rivet launcher. Industrial rivets will function as kinetic projectiles. Limited range, but significant penetration potential. More Sentinels were visible in the corridor beyond the shattered door. Eva estimated at least a dozen, with more likely following. We need a plan, she said, reloading the revolver as Eris had shown her. We can't fight our way through the entire ship with limited ammunition. The shuttle is our only option, Jax insisted. If we can reach it, we might be able to use its systems to contact the scrap heap. Communications are being jammed, Boren reminded them, and the ship's structure is actively reconfiguring to impede our progress. Eris had been studying his translation device. Perhaps we can reason with the ship's AI? If I could access a control interface. You've done enough damage already. Eva cut him off. No more interfacing with alien technology. She thought rapidly, assessing their options. Boren, could we use the ship's reconfiguration against it? Force a structural change that would create a direct path to the docking bay. The engineer considered this. Possible. Significant energy discharge in specific structural nodes might trigger automated reconfiguration protocols. would require precise placement and timing. What kind of energy discharge? Eva asked. Explosive force applied to key junctions, Bourne explained. Have materials to create rudimentary explosives from components here. Eva nodded. Do it. In the meantime, we need to hold this position. She turned to Jax and Eris. Conserve ammunition. Only fire when you have a clear shot that will disable a sentinel. As Boren worked to create explosives from the materials available, the three humans took defensive positions, using equipment and debris for cover. The sentinels continued their assault, entering the chamber in small groups. The firearms proved devastatingly effective against them, their kinetic projectiles tearing through the energy-resistant carapaces that had rendered plasma weapons useless. Still, their ammunition was finite, and the sentinels seemed endless. Eva's revolver clicked empty after her sixth shot, forcing her to switch to the modified rivet launcher Boren had created. The industrial rivets proved surprisingly effective, punching clean holes through the sentinel's shells. Jax was conserving the shotgun shells, making each blast count by waiting until multiple sentinels aligned before firing. Eris, despite his academic background, showed unexpected proficiency with his pistol, placing shots with careful precision. Almost complete, Boren announced, assembling several devices that resembled crude grenades. Explosives will disrupt structural integrity at key points. Should force emergency reconfiguration protocols. A new wave of sentinels entered the chamber, this group moving differently than before, more coordinated, adapting to the humans' tactics. They spread out, making it harder to target multiple units with a single shot. They're learning, Eva realized with growing dread, adapting to our weapons and tactics. Impossible, Eris objected, firing at an approaching sentinel. They're autonomous units, not a hive mind. Evidence suggests otherwise, Boren rumbled, finishing his work on the explosives. Sentinel behavior patterns show increasing complexity and coordination. Possible networked intelligence emerging. Eva didn't care about the theoretical implications. How long until those explosives are ready? Ready now, Boren confirmed. Need to place them at 4 key structural junctions, estimated 50 meters from our position in different directions. Eva assessed their dwindling ammunition and the increasing number of sentinels. We'll need to split up, place the explosives simultaneously, and rendezvous at the docking bay. Splitting up seems like a terrible idea, Jax protested, firing the last shotgun shell and switching to a crude harpoon-like weapon Boren had created. Remaining here is certain defeat, Boren stated flatly. Ammunition depleted in approximately 6 minutes at current usage rate. Sentinel numbers increasing. Eva made the call. Boren, you take the most difficult placement. Jax, you're the fastest. Take the farthest junction. Dr. Thorne and I will handle the remaining 2. She looked at Eris. Can you handle this solo? The historian nodded, a newfound determination in his eyes. My hobby has prepared me better than you might expect, Captain. Boren distributed the explosive devices, explaining the placement procedures and detonation mechanisms. Synchronized detonation required for maximum effectiveness. Timer set for 5 minutes once activated. Eva checked the rivet launcher and the few remaining bullets for the revolver. Once the explosives are placed, head straight for the docking bay. Don't wait, don't look back. We rendezvous at the shuttle. They moved to the door, preparing to split up. The corridor outside was momentarily clear, the sentinels apparently regrouping. 5 minutes from my mark, Eva said, finger hovering over her explosives activation switch. 3, 2, 1 mark. They activated their explosives simultaneously and darted into the corridor, each heading in a different direction. Eva sprinted down her assigned path, the ship's twisting architecture making navigation challenging. Twice she encountered sentinels, dispatching them with controlled bursts from the rivet launcher before continuing her desperate race against time. She reached her designated junction, a point where several corridors converged in a structurally significant node. Following Bourne's instructions, she placed the explosive device against what appeared to be a power conduit and secured it in place. The timer showed less than 2 minutes remaining. Eva turned to head for the docking bay when a sentinel dropped from the ceiling directly in her path. This one was larger than the others, its carapace bearing different markings, a command unit, perhaps. Before she could raise her weapon, it lashed out with frightening speed, knocking the rivet launcher from her hands. She drew the revolver, aware that only 2 bullets remained. The sentinel advanced, its movements more deliberate than the others, almost calculating. Eva fired once, the bullet striking the machine, but not in a critical location. It staggered, but continued forward. 1 bullet left. Eva backed away, looking for an advantage. The corridor offered little in terms of cover or weapons. The sentinel lunged just as she fired her final round. The bullet struck true this time, hitting what appeared to be a central processing node. The machine collapsed mid-lunge, sliding to a halt at her feet. Eva didn't wait to celebrate. With the rivet launcher lost and the revolver empty, she was effectively unarmed. She sprinted toward the docking bay, hoping the others had been successful. As she ran, the ship began to tremble. The explosions would be detonating any second. She rounded a corner and found herself facing a blank wall where a corridor should have been. Damn it, she cursed, turning to find another route. The ship was actively working against her, sealing passages and creating dead ends. The first explosion rocked the vessel, the deck plate beneath her feet vibrating violently. Then another and another. The ship's structure began to groan and shift, walls flowing like liquid metal, corridors stretching and contracting. Eva was thrown against a wall as the ship's gravity fluctuated. For a terrifying moment, she floated helplessly, then crashed back to the deck as gravity reasserted itself. But something had changed. The corridor ahead now sloped downward in a direction that her internal navigation suggested might lead toward the docking bay. The ship was reconfiguring, just as Bourne had predicted. Emergency protocols were creating new pathways as the explosions disrupted key structural points. Eva ran down the newly formed corridor, hoping it would lead her to safety rather than deeper into the ship's bowels. After what seemed like an eternity of twisting passages and shifting architecture, she emerged into a vast open space she recognized, the docking bay. Across the chamber, the shuttle waited, its hatch open. Jack stood in the doorway, waving frantically. "Captain, hurry!" he shouted, firing a makeshift harpoon gun at a sentinel approaching from her blind side. Eva sprinted across the bay, aware of movement all around her as more sentinels converged on the shuttle. She could see Bourne inside the craft, working furiously at the controls. "Where's Eris?" she gasped as she reached the shuttle. "Inside," Jax replied, firing again. "But we've got company." Dozens of sentinels were swarming into the docking bay, moving with coordinated precision toward the shuttle. Eva leapt inside, Jax following immediately after, slamming his hand on the hatch control. The door began to close, but not quickly enough. A sentinel forced its appendages into the gap, preventing the hatch from sealing. More gathered behind it, their combined strength beginning to force the door open wider. "We need more firepower," Eva shouted, looking around desperately for a weapon. Eris emerged from the cockpit, carrying what appeared to be a large metal tube. "Perhaps this will suffice, Captain." "What is that?" Eva demanded. "A modified one of the asteroid seeding launchers," he explained, moving to the partially open hatch. Reconfigured it to fire concentrated packets of mining explosives. He aimed the device at the mass of sentinels attempting to breach the shuttle. "I suggest you brace yourselves." Eva and Jax grabbed handholds as Eris pulled the trigger. The launcher roared to life, a deep-throated mechanical sound utterly unlike the high-pitched whine of energy weapons. A projectile the size of a fist erupted from the tube, striking the mass of sentinels clustered at the shuttle door. The explosion that followed was catastrophic for the machines, their energy-absorbing carapaces useless against the raw kinetic force and shrapnel of the blast. Dozens of sentinels were shredded instantly, their metallic bodies torn apart and scattered across the docking bay. The explosion's shockwave rocked the shuttle, but also cleared the hatch opening. Jax slammed his palm on the emergency close button, and this time the door sealed properly, the locking mechanisms engaging with a reassuring clunk. "Get us out of here," Eva ordered, climbing toward the cockpit. Jax vaulted into the pilot's seat, his hands flying across the controls. Engines firing. "Hold on." The shuttle's engines ignited, lifting them clear of the docking bay floor as more sentinels poured into the vast chamber. Boren worked the defensive systems, using the mining lasers to cut through support structures and create barriers between them and their pursuers. "The docking bay doors are sealed," Jax reported, his voice tense. "I can't override from here." "Then make our own exit," Eva commanded. "Full power to forward mining lasers." "Ineffective against bay doors," Boren warned. "Material similar to sentinel carapaces. Energy absorbent." Eris looked up from reloading his modified launcher. "What about the asteroid seeder? It's designed to penetrate rock formations." Eva nodded sharply. "Do it." Jax targeted the bay doors with the asteroid seeder, a device normally used to implant explosive charges into asteroids for mining operations. The launcher fired a series of high-velocity penetrator rounds that punched through the energy-absorbent material of the doors, creating a pattern of holes. "Now load explosive charges," Eva ordered. "Already on it," Jax replied, fingers dancing across the controls. The secondary system loaded and fired a volley of mining charges through the holes they created. "Fire in the hole." The resulting explosion blew a ragged hole in the bay doors, large enough for the shuttle to pass through. Jax didn't hesitate, ramming the throttles forward and sending their craft hurtling through the opening and out into the vacuum of space. Behind them, the derelict ship's exterior began to shift and flow, the damage from their explosives triggering massive reconfigurations throughout its structure. Parts of the hull phased in and out of visibility, while other sections seemed to fold into themselves in geometrically impossible ways. "Set course for the scrap heap," Eva ordered, dropping into the co-pilot's seat. "Maximum thrust." Jax complied, but a warning light on the console immediately began flashing. "We've got company. Multiple contacts pursuing." From the breach they'd created, a swarm of sentinels emerged, their bodies somehow maintaining integrity in the vacuum of space. Unlike the units they'd encountered inside the ship, these appeared specifically designed for external operations, sleeker, with propulsion systems that allowed them to move through space with frightening speed. "How are they functioning in vacuum?" Eris wondered aloud, peering through a viewport. "They must have self-contained systems completely independent from a ship." Theorized later, Eva snapped. "Can they catch us?" Boren checked the readings. "Affirmative. Current velocity trajectory indicates intercept in 3 minutes, 17 seconds. "Jax," Eva prompted. The pilot's expression was grim. "I'm giving her everything she's got, Captain. These mining shuttles weren't built for speed." Eva turned to Eris. "Doctor, can that modified launcher work in vacuum?" "The principle is sound," he replied, examining the weapon. "The explosive charges are self-oxidizing, and the projectile system is mechanically driven. But accuracy will be compromised without atmospheric stabilization." "We don't need accuracy against that swarm," Eva said, pointing to the sentinels closing in behind them. "Just volume of fire." Eris nodded, moving to the airlock. "I'll need to manually operate it from the exterior hatch. Partial depressurization will be required." "Do it," Eva ordered. "Boren, help him set up." "Jax, evasive maneuvers. Make us a harder target without losing too much velocity toward the scrap heap." As Eris and Boren prepared the airlock for partial depressurization, Eva opened a communication channel to their main ship. "Scrap heap, this is Captain Rostova. Emergency Protocol Alpha 7. Power up main engines and prepare for immediate departure. We are returning to ship with hostile pursuit. Repeat, hostile pursuit." The automated systems of the scrap heap acknowledged her command, beginning the pre-flight sequence that would have the salvage vessel ready to depart as soon as they docked. Through the rear viewport, Eva could see the sentinels gaining on them, their movements eerily coordinated as they formed an attack pattern. The lead units were less than a kilometer behind now and closing rapidly. Airlock ready, Boren reported. Dr. Thorne in position with modified launcher. Eva nodded. Open exterior hatch on my mark. Mark. The outer airlock door slid open, revealing Eris secured by a tether. The modified launcher braced against his shoulder. Without atmosphere to carry sound, they couldn't hear the weapon fire, but Eva saw the flash as the first projectile launched toward the pursuing sentinels. The explosion in vacuum was different than in atmosphere. No fireball, just an expanding sphere of debris and shrapnel that tore through the lead sentinel units. Eris fired again and again, each shot creating another deadly cloud that the pursuing machines had to navigate through or be shredded. The tactic worked temporarily, slowing the Sentinels' advance as they were forced to alter course around the debris fields. But they adapted quickly, spreading out to present a wider target profile and reduce the effectiveness of the area of effect weapons. 2 minutes to scrap heap, Jax reported, his voice tight with concentration. Sentinels adapting to our defensive fire. Eva's mind raced, seeking another advantage. Boren, what about the mining debris in the shuttle's collection tanks? Could we jettison it behind us? The engineer nodded once. Affirmative. Would create dispersed kinetic barrier. Solid particulate matter of varying sizes. Do it, Eva ordered. Boren moved to the rear controls, overriding the safety protocols on the collection tanks. With a shudder, the shuttle released its cargo of mining debris. Thousands of rocky fragments ranging from dust-sized particles to chunks the size of a human fist, all ejected at high velocity relative to the pursuing sentinels. The effect was devastating. Without energy signatures to detect and avoid, the sentinels flew directly into the cloud of high-velocity debris. Their carapaces, designed to absorb and redirect energy attacks, provided little protection against the kinetic impacts of countless solid projectiles. Dozens of the machines were damaged or destroyed, their formations breaking apart as they attempted to navigate the deadly cloud. That bought us some time, Eva said grimly. Jack's status? 1 minute to docking, the pilot replied. But we're not out of this yet. Look, from the derelict ship, a new wave of sentinels had launched. Hundreds of them, far more than they could hope to defeat with their limited resources. And these moved differently, their formations more complex, their trajectories suggesting a level of tactical sophistication beyond what they'd seen before. They're learning, Eris said quietly as he returned from the airlock, adapting their tactics based on our previous encounters. Eva made a quick decision. Jack's new plan. Take us past the scrap heap, close enough for a hard dock procedure, but don't slow down. Boren, prepare for emergency coupling on the fly. Captain, Jax questioned, though his hands were already adjusting their course. We can't stop to dock normally. They'll be on us before we can complete transfer and disengage, Eva explained. We'll hard dock at speed and drag the scrap heap with us out of the asteroid field. Once we're clear, we could transfer properly and make the jump to FTL. It was a desperate plan, bordering on suicidal. Hard docking, while both vessels were in motion, risked catastrophic damage to both ships. But Eva saw no alternative. If they stopped to dock normally, the Sentinels would overtake them before they could complete the procedure. Approaching scrap heap, Jax announced, his voice steady despite the strain. Matching vectors for hard dock in 3, 2, 1. The shuttle slammed into the scrap heap's emergency docking collar with bone-jarring force. Automatic systems engaged immediately, magnetic clamps locking the smaller craft to the larger vessel even as alarms blared throughout both ships. Structural integrity holding, Boren reported, his massive hands working furiously across multiple control panels. Docking clamps engaged. Transfer tunnel establishing. Scrap heap. Execute emergency departure. Protocol. Eva ordered into the comm. Full thrust. Trajectory clear of asteroid field. Prepare for FTL jump as soon as we're in open space. The salvage vessel's engines ignited, the enormous thrust adding to the shuttle's momentum as both ships accelerated away from the derelict and its swarm of pursuing sentinels. Sentinels still in pursuit, Eris reported, watching the rear sensors. But they're falling behind. Our combined thrust is greater than their propulsion capabilities. Eva allowed herself a moment of hope. If they could clear the asteroid field and make the jump to FTL, they might escape this nightmare alive. But her relief was short-lived. A new alert sounded from the communications array. Incoming transmission, Bourne announced. Lumine patrol vessel approaching at high velocity. The sleek form of the Lumine ship that had scanned them earlier appeared on their screens, moving with impossible grace through the asteroid field toward their position. For a moment, Eva dared to hope they were coming to assist. Surely, even the arrogant Lumine wouldn't abandon them to the Sentinels. The transmission connected, and the luminescent face of the Lumine commander appeared on their screen. Primitive salvagers, the being addressed them, its tone even more condescending than before. Your disturbance of the derelict vessel has activated its defense systems, as our scans now confirm. We will neutralize these obsolete energy constructs with standard dissipation protocols. The Lumine vessel accelerated past them toward the pursuing Sentinels, its hull glowing brighter as it prepared its energy-based weapon systems. Eva watched the screens as the Lumine ship engaged the swarm, firing intricate patterns of energy that should, by all logic, have destroyed the Sentinels instantly. Instead, the Sentinels absorbed the attacks completely, their carapaces glowing brighter with each blast. The Lumine ship fired again, more intensely, clearly surprised by the ineffectiveness of its weapons. The Sentinels swarmed around it, attaching themselves to its hull like parasites, their limbs penetrating the once impervious energy shields of the Lumine vessel. Impossible! The Lumine commander's voice came through their calm, genuine fear replacing the earlier condescension. Our dissipation protocols are ineffective. These constructs are absorbing our... The transmission cut off abruptly. On the screen, the Lumine patrol ship's elegant form began to dim, its light fading as the Sentinels drained its energy. Within moments, the once proud vessel was dark and lifeless, drifting helplessly among the asteroids as the Sentinels detached and resumed their pursuit of the scrap heap. "They're coming again," Jax warned. "And they're faster now. They've absorbed the Lumine ship's energy." "Time to clear asteroid field," Eva demanded. 47 seconds, Boren replied. "Sentinels will intercept before we clear." Eva made her final play. "Jettison all mining charges. Set for proximity detonation. Create the biggest debris field you can between us and them." Jax and Boren worked in perfect coordination, programming and ejecting every explosive charge the scrap heap carried. The charges scattered in their wake, their proximity sensors activated. "Brace for shock waves," Eva warned as the first wave of Sentinels reached the field of charges. The explosions were spectacular, even in a vacuum of space. Chain reactions rippled through the asteroid field as the charges detonated, shattering smaller asteroids and creating an expanding cloud of debris that engulfed the pursuing Sentinels. The shock waves buffeted the scrap heap, but its sturdy frame held together as Jax fought to maintain their course. "Did it work?" Eris asked, peering at the sensor readings. "Partially," Boren replied. 87% of Sentinel units destroyed or disabled. Remaining units have altered course, returning to derelict vessel. A collective sigh of relief passed through the crew as the scrap heap finally cleared the asteroid field, its engines pushing them toward open space where they could safely enter FTL travel. "Preparing for FTL jump," Jax announced, his hand steady on the controls despite the ordeal they'd survived. Eva nodded, finally allowing herself to relax slightly. "Set course for Proxima Station. We need repairs, medical attention, and a very stiff drink. And perhaps a reassessment of certain historical technologies," Eris added quietly, cradling one of his antique firearms with newfound respect. The FDL engines engaged, and the stars stretched into lines as the scrap heap left the asteroid field and its ancient horrors behind. But the implications of what they'd discovered and survived would ripple through human and Lumine space alike. 2 weeks later, Eva sat in a private booth at the Neutron Dive, a questionably reputable bar on the outer ring of Proxima Station. Across from her sat Boren, Jax, and Dr. Thorne, all showing signs of their ordeal, but very much alive. Their wounds had healed, their ship had been repaired, and the data they'd salvaged from the derelict vessel had fetched a price that made their near-death experience almost worthwhile. Almost. To primitive solutions, Eva proposed, raising her glass in a toast. To kinetic energy, Eris added with a smile, clinking his glass against hers. Jax shook his head, though he joined the toast. Still can't believe the mighty Lumine got their glowing asses handed to them by machines they could have destroyed with a rock. Technological overspecialization creates vulnerability, Boren stated, sipping his drink through a straw designed for his non-human physiology. Energy dependency blinds to kinetic alternatives. Eva was about to respond when she noticed a disturbance near the bar's entrance. A group of Lumine had entered, an unusual sight in a place like the Neutron Dive. The energy beings rarely deigned to visit establishments catering to solid species. Yet here they were, and they were heading directly for Eva's table. The lead Lumine stopped before them, its luminescent form shifting subtly in what Eva had learned to recognize as discomfort. Captain Rostova. It addressed her, its melodious voice notably lacking the condescension they'd grown accustomed to from the species. "That's me," Eva replied cautiously. "What can I do for the esteemed representatives of the Lumine?" The being's form flickered slightly, the equivalent of a human clearing their throat. "The Lumine Conclave has reviewed the data from our encounter with the derelict vessel and its defensive constructs. We have also analyzed your methods of defeating those constructs." Eva waited, saying nothing. "Let them get to the point. We wish to consult with you." The Lumine continued, obvious difficulty with the concept evident in its fluctuating glow. "The Conclave believes your expertise with primitive kinetic technologies may prove valuable in developing new defense protocols." Jax nearly choked on his drink. Eris looked like he might burst from suppressed laughter. Even Boren's eyes blinked in sequence, his species equivalent of amazement. Eva kept her expression neutral, though she couldn't entirely suppress a small smile. "The Lumine Conclave wants to learn about projectile weapons, historical firearms, explosives. We prefer to think of it as broadening our technological perspective," the Lumine replied stiffly. Eva glanced at her crew, then back to the Lumine delegation. "Well, you're in luck. Dr. Thorne here is one of humanity's foremost experts on historical weaponry, though his consulting fees are quite substantial." Eris straightened in his seat, adjusting his glasses with newfound confidence. "I would be delighted to provide the Lumine Conclave with a comprehensive overview of kinetic weapons development throughout human history," he said formally, though Eva could hear the pride in his voice. "Perhaps beginning with the revolutionary impact of gunpowder in the Earth year 1232. As Eris launched into an enthusiastic explanation, the Lumine representatives clustering around him with grudging but genuine interest, Eva caught Boren's gaze across the table. "Never thought I'd see the day," she murmured, taking another sip of her drink. "History cycles," the engineer rumbled philosophically. "Advance becomes conventional. Forgotten becomes innovative. Old becomes new." Eva nodded, watching as a species that had once mocked humanity's primitive reliance on physical weapons now listened intently to a lecture on the principles of ballistics and explosive force. Sometimes, she reflected, the oldest solutions were the best ones, especially when facing enemies designed to counter the newest technologies. In the corner of the bar, Eris had convinced one of the Lumine to hold an antique revolver, the energy being awkwardly manipulating the physical object with its semi-corporeal appendages. The historian's face glowed with vindication as he demonstrated the simple mechanical action of the hammer and trigger. To the thunder of ancient weapons, Eva toasted quietly, in the silence of shattered arrogance. Jax grinned and raised his glass. "I'll drink to that, Captain. I'll definitely drink to that."